This is part 2 of our Loomis female figure that we're going to watercolor. We spent the last video working up the mannequin and then doing a tight sketch of the figure on some watercolor paper that we're now, in this video, we're going to start adding the color and doing a quick color study based on what we're seeing in the photograph, and also just kind of playing around with the colors and doing things we want to do and seeing where it goes. And again, this is a quick study. This is something that I would typically do within a class period with my students when we're all working and we have that 20-minute, 30-minute to an hour typically is what I give them on a hour and 50-minute class. You know, we could possibly have up to 40 minutes on this portion of it. So we'd spend some time warming up with mannequins. We might spend some time doing some more mass-oriented sketches as well. Pretty quick sketches, maybe a minute at most on each one of them. We'd shift the model, do another one, and do another one after a minute. So this would be the culmination of all that warming up. We'd do a quick hour-long pose and hopefully get a drawing and then get the watercolor work done within that hour. So that's kind of what I'm modeling this video off of, is that time after we've warmed up and we have put down on paper with an initial sketch a drawing that we can now add the color to. All right, so here's my drawing. It's all ready to rock and roll. I did adjust the leg a little bit. Moved it out a little further. I had this hand here. I'm in the editing phase right now on the first one, so I may have edited out all the problems I had with this, but I got that one. Again, I noted in the first sketch, I don't have the hand high enough or tight enough, so I actually have a little spot in between her arm and her body that isn't in the photograph, but it's not a big deal. You know, nobody's going to see the photograph. Let's get started. What I typically do here is I'll block in the color in the background first, and then I'll go after the foreground stuff. I'm going to keep the color in the background cool and neutral so that it will cause the flesh tone and the hair. She's got reddish brown hair. That I think will make it pop a lot better. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with some ultramarine. I want a fairly good thick mixture. All right. Mix in a little burnt sienna and maybe a little yellow ochre here. So we'll get this greenish bluish color going. There we go. And I'm going to keep that color going. I'm going to mix up another one. I'm going to get a little red over here. So we just have a kind of a mixture, warm and cool, that I can work up. So that's a pretty good puddle for no bigger than this piece is. I'm working on a 9x12. I think this is a Canson paper, so it's the student grade stuff, the stuff you really want to be practicing on as you're building your drawing and your figure skills, and then learning how to apply the watercolor. Don't burn good paper on this. You're going to go through a lot of these, so at least that's the theory. You know, the more you do of these, the better you'll get. So I'm just going to come in and just begin with some of the blocking, just coming around the figure. Mix in some blues, get a little more bluish color there. Cool. Following the contour edge there. Throw a little bit of it in here. I'm working with a big flat brush. Again, work with as big a brush as possible. Again, if I make a mistake, so what? I can fix it. Actually, that's interesting. Looks like a fingerprint. The oil from your hands can transfer. So that's going to dry, and it's going to just sit there and do its thing. I can do, if I've gotten too far into the form in various places, I can fix that, or I can come back in with some other colors and some gradients. But we have some interesting things starting to happen. Here's my little fingerprint, and we're just going to let it dry at this point. Okay, it's been a minute or two. That Canson paper's dried. It's still a little damp in spots. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to mix up a fairly thin blue, and I'm just going to come along the figure and lay in kind of a shadow on the form. You know, wherever it's dark, I'm going to drop in some of this blue, and that'll be a base color for when we add the warm tones in. So we'll just get started, and it's a very thin, it's not going to be very dense. Need to unload my brush a little bit. Alright, so yeah. And I'm just looking for big shapes. What's happening over here on the shoulder, on this back side, underneath side. Okay. Get this arm, come up here on the hand, just drop some blues on there, right on the underneath side there, and I think it's looking pretty good. There's quite a bit of tone over here on the fingers. I know I've lost any of the detail there, but I can resurrect that when it comes to the detail work when we get to that point. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and get a little more blue right there on the there we go. All right, now that's going to dry. As soon as that's dry, we'll block in the warm tones. Let that dry, and then we'll come in with the detail, the drawing part. So hang on. We're now going to begin working with the flesh tones, the oranges, the reds, and block in some color on the figure. We've got the cool in the shadows here. It's kind of a harsh edge. All that's going to loosen up with this Canson paper. I just know how it's going to react, so I'm going to mix up a bit of the orangish with a bit of red in it. It's thin, and we'll just block in some tones. Feels dry, at least dry enough to put my hand on it, and I'll just come in and we'll just begin. There we go. And we'll just block all the tone on the figure. We'll tighten all the detail up in the later stages. We'll be doing some drawing, glazing. A little spot right there. That I can deal with when we pick it. If we're picking any highlights out. It's kind of a hot mess right at the moment. that out a little bit. Okay. It's just essentially a light color glaze on the form. Throw a little more of it back here on the hair. Alright. And right there in the cheek. Alright, and might even work a little purple into that. This little darker reddish orange. Alright, so it's all damp and we're just going to bounce around and look for the darker shapes, and we'll drop that in. I'm working with a number 5, I think. Yep. Okay. Okay. Got a nice shadow on this side of the hip. Throw that in there. Throw a little darker right along in there. Comes around under the kneecap. And the next step is let this dry, and I'm going to come back in and we'll start doing a little drawing and definition. And once the definition and the structure is reestablished with some of the darker edge drawing with brush, we'll be able to start making more color complexities on top of the figure. So hang on. Alright, so I am not going to spend a lot of time nuancing all of the colors. I'm just going to come in and really do a drawing on top of this. Again, I'm really kind of doing a color sketch. I'm not too concerned about realism or anything like that. I just want to get a nice sense of form and defining that pose and the figure in it. So we'll give it a whirl. I have a fairly thick mixture of burnt umber, some burnt sienna to get a darker line. And I'm going to bounce around and look for the darkest shadows and contour edges, and I'm going to paint that in there. And it should start giving the overall figure a little more structure, and we'll start seeing a lot of good things starting to happen. come in. I'm going to work a little bit on the face, this eyebrow. Catch that eyelid. So lots of structure. It's coming along. I'll throw a little red on the lip there real quick with the ruby red. Again, this is where that drawing, all that practice drawing, your facial features with Loomis, it comes into play. Got that. We just reestablished everything to the figure and the pose. I'm going to add in real quick because I'm going to pull it up the leg a little ways. I'm going to really go after the contrast of this shadow down here. So This is turning out to be a pretty good little sketch. Even though I had a hard time with that hand over there. So that's how you do it. Just practice it. This isn't perfect. It's a sketch. It's a study. We're just kind of playing around, seeing how we can apply the watercolor to the Loomis method. And it's what I do in my figure drawing classes along with my students as we're working on an hour-long pose. Go in there and draw and sketch for 10-15 minutes and then dedicate the next 45 minutes to 50 minutes working on the color and get it in there. So, hey, I hope you like this video. If you got any value out of it, give me a like and a subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.